Mhm.
Okay, so we are live and we're back for another great conversation today. I'm really excited to be here with Sheena, who is a friend and just such a well-known leader across the city of Boston, who has been connecting people for all of her time here.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about an issue that is, I think, on all of our minds and has been, and is getting more and more front of mind, which is that while we are all physically apart, how do we still stay connected?
Yeah.
So, Sheena, welcome. If you could
Thank
just tell us
you.
a little bit, what's your background? How do you find yourself in what you do today?
Yep.
And what do you see as kind of the mission that drives you?
Thank you. So excited to be here. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Sheena Collier, and I am the founder and CEO of the Collier Connection, which is an agency I created a couple of years ago to start to build out these models or ways for young professionals of color, particularly Black professionals, to build community across Boston. And so I've personally, this is my 16th year in Boston, from Albany, New York, and came up here from Atlanta. And when I came here, just experienced, like many have this story of having a hard time getting connected in Boston, not really feeling like it's somewhere you belong, not being able to find communities that you identify with. And not necessarily because all of it doesn't exist here, but just because it's just hard to plug into. And so after being here for a decade or so, or after being here for a couple of years, started to organize people informally. And then after doing that for a long time, decided to build a business around it.
So you are known across the city as a super connector, and tell us just a little bit how you as a person have been thinking about staying connected to people during this pandemic.
Yeah, so I think like everyone else initially, and still am in shock, particularly around the stuff that I do, which is all based on in-person experiences. So, I've had to really shift really quickly and pivot to think about what does community mean in a virtual world. And so I've thought about it a couple of different ways. The first I really thought about was my family. So I mentioned I'm from New York, and my mother and siblings, some of my siblings are there, but really I have family all over the country. And our family reunion was supposed to be in July. And so one of the things that a subset of my family has started to do is every Saturday weekly Zoom. We do a weekly Zoom hangout for about 2 hours. And we just all log on. There's really no rhyme or reason to it. It's just kind of us being a family. We're talking about stuff we did this week. A lot of us are cleaning house while it's going on. But just a way for us to be together and be able to, thankfully, no one in my family health-wise has been impacted. And so really it's a way for us to just make sure we're seeing each other every week, checking in, because we know this is something that changes week by week, really day by day. So that's a big piece of it. And it's been fun. And now I'm the organizer in my family as well. My family, so I'm the one that pulled this together, but now other people are starting to get into it. Even my mother texted us all this week and said, this Saturday, I want us to actually talk about what we've learned from this time and what we want to keep. So that's been really cool. On the kind of business side, so again, I have a business that's built on in-person experiences. So this has rocked my business a lot. It's a somewhat uncertain time for me as an entrepreneur, but actually right before that family call or right after it, I have a weekly business wellness check-in with a group of Black women entrepreneurs who are all, for the most part, had stuff that was based on in-person. Yeah. And so we're supporting each other, doing yoga, meditation with each other, but also essentially workshopping our businesses together and talking about like what kind of changes we need to make. We didn't all know each other. So me and another woman who know each other pulled together our group of entrepreneur friends. So we've all become kind of a circle. And so, and a couple of things in that area, also with Collier Connection, I've been hosting these really amazing building virtual community discussions. I have about maybe 6 scheduled throughout April and have had half of them. And leading up to this time, I was building a membership model called Boston While Black, which I'm still building, but have had to shift. So I reached out to folks who were interested and said, "Hey, would you mind getting on a call with me to talk about what that could look like virtually?" And so, yeah, we've been having, it's usually 3 to 7 people. And it's a combination of what do people need right now during this crisis? And then what do they see community looking like in the future? So that's like a snippet. When I was writing it down for this, I was like, I'm doing a lot. But it's just in my nature. It's just, it's just what I do. And so I'm happy to be able to help create these different spaces for people.
Yeah. And so tell me a little bit about, across all these different facets of your own life, family, business, social, and this transition to a virtual community, what has kind of been the, why is it important for all of us to be thinking about community right now, even if it's a kind of different way of than we're used to thinking about community?
Right. One, we all need others to process all that's going on with all of what is going on with. And I think that's been a theme across. Like, people are at varying degrees of wrapping their mind around what's happening. It's impacting different people differently. You have the scale of some of us who are home, doing yoga and learning new recipes, and to people that have really lost jobs or lost family members and are in crisis. And so I think that has been a theme across, of people just want the space to process and figure out, whatever angle the conversation happens to be, whether it's business or personal, just how this is impacting their life. And also, I think the reason I jumped on doing this so quickly, even though, just to be honest and clear, I'm also dealing with my own feelings and mental health around it. And so, I've also had to make sure I'm balancing between being a convener and taking care of my own self. Yeah. But I thought it was important because even as we're continuing to try to understand what's happening, I think we can know that things are not going to go back to the same. And so as much as we can be at least talking about it now, and thinking about, so for someone that does events, if tomorrow they were like, okay, everyone can go back outside, no one's going to a 500 person event, so I wanted to get in front of that and started to have conversations of, even post this, whatever that means, what will you want? What will you be looking for in a community? Like, what do you think you'll need to be rebuild? And, people have brought up things like, people are gonna be looking for jobs is one, and we know, like any place, Boston is a lot about relationships. And so that comes up a lot. I think also the people that I engage through Collier Connection and just in my own life also want to know how they can give back and how they can give back to Black and Brown communities. And so that's something that people reach out to me about a lot, of like, where can they give either money or supplies? And so, I think we're by nature, we're just meant to be in community. And so this is, it's forcing us all to rethink what that looks like. I actually started Collier Connection and some of what I was doing in opposition to so much online stuff. Like, I actually felt like, oh, we're getting so caught up in these social media spaces, but that's not real, authentic community. So this is pushing me to really think about, how do you build authentically with people when you're not in person with them?
Yeah. And I think especially because we're seeing now just how far back the disproportionate impacts that people are experiencing during COVID, just how far back those were already shaped, right. From various aspects of community and the policies that were either put in place to create opportunity, or kind of inactions that had systemically left injustices across communities, and particularly communities of color. And now we see the, whether it's in rates of confirmed cases or fatalities, or on the economic side, folks who are disproportionately still having to go to work and not, don't have the economic luxury of staying at home, and then not being not qualifying as easily for stimulus relief or other forms of support around COVID. We know that residents of color, particularly in Boston and beyond, the Black community is really at the center of how we need to be restructuring and thinking about rebuilding our systems so that we will actually have resilient communities. I mean, tell me a little bit about what you're hearing in the community and how you're thinking about what that should look like in the long run.
Yeah. Even pre-COVID, I thought like this, and I think this has just heightened it because of everything that you just said. Those of us, I have been fortunate and blessed to go to really great schools, both for undergraduate and graduate school. I went to Spelman and Harvard. I've had amazing job opportunities. I've worked in places where I've gotten access to decision makers. And while obviously I appreciate that, I've never lost sight of that then to me creates a responsibility on my end to think about those in my community that have not had those opportunities. And a lot of the, though some on the surface, I guess some of what I'm doing looks like socializing because, it is. And I think it's important for Black people to experience joy because we experience a lot of hardship. It's also a way for those of us that have had these opportunities to really think about, like, how do we collectively think about our community? Because we have images of Black people who are doing really well, and thankfully a lot of us are. But when you look at the country as a whole, that's not really the picture. And so I think in this time and even before this time, what I'm really focused on is how to organize those of us that have the means, that have the time, that have the access to be a part of these systems and really create new systems. And figure out, one of the challenges I think in Boston in particular, and I'm sure other places, I've just only really lived in Boston as an adult, is a lack of ownership of things by Black people. So home ownership, commercial real estate space, like businesses, we have it, but not at the level of like where we are, have a lot of economic power. And so I think that things like that we can continue to work on so that one, if and when we have some other crisis, we're more in a place to support each other. I think in the short term, like kind of while we're in crisis mode, a lot of it is, again, organizing those of us that have the mental space to even be thinking about the future, to be having those conversations. So that's why I mentioned I'm organizing these kind of different groupings of people to acknowledge that we have something going on right now that we need to put our money into, we need to put our time into, but we also have to be the ones to be thinking about what happens beyond this, because some people don't even have the space for that right now.
Yeah. And it seems like entrepreneurship is a common thread also of both, what we need to make sure we're supporting and particularly from a perspective, from a lens of equity, in not just exacerbating, difficulties folks already had in accessing capital and, many of the structural inequities that we were seeing in wealth creation, but entrepreneurship as a way to kind of get a piece of the pie that's going to come when we do have resources flowing to a recovery. So for the business, how do we, from your groups that you're convening, from the spaces that you're in now virtually, what are you seeing and hearing from entrepreneurs in terms of what they'll need to come out of this, and how to ensure that people even, are surviving long enough to get to the point where we're talking about recovery?
Yeah. An immediate thing, I think this is across the board, is this move to digital, so and being able to, I think, this is my own opinion, there's no business after this that can't have some digital component.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge leap for a lot of businesses. I'm actually waiting right now, literally right now, I think they're actually calling me for a delivery from Zaz's restaurant in Hyde Park. So they have it where you can order weekly, you can get a certain number of meals for a week, and they'll deliver it. For I thought that was great. I mean, they did that like in the first like week or two
Yep.
of this. How many more businesses would be in better shape if they were able to pivot that quickly and know how to update their systems or whatever? I mean, they're just using a Google form, but not everyone is familiar with even creating stuff like that and being able to think differently. I just saw in the news that there are restaurants in Somerville that are now acting as grocery stores, and they're like, okay, we're not selling our supply to our regular customers, so how can we now just sell it as groceries? Those type of things that one, I think being able to have some digital access helps, but also having, I would assume, some capital to be able to breathe and think about new ways to run your business, I think are just really just important things that people need in the short term. And in the longer term, having, how can I say it? Something that is, I've seen probably less in these individual conversations, more so in the work that I still do with the chamber, is if you were selling something to a company, like if you were procuring part of a supply chain that they're not using right now, or what I've seen is some places they need things in bulk now. Like hospitals need lots of PPEs, so they need to go to like big suppliers. And so just having systems in place beforehand that people don't get kicked out of supply chains in a crisis, that they're actually able to be used more. I think on the kind of more individual side, there's just a lot of angst and anxiety people have, and losing their jobs, losing their family members. And so, how do we set up systems the same way that something that I heard in one of the calls that I was in was that someone was looking for telehealth, like mental health services. And personally, I've seen a lot around how people's doctor's appointments can now become telehealth, but I don't know how it's really been promoted about you can also find a mental health counselor through telehealth. And so just these things that, again, people knowing how to access technology in this way to be able to still connect with people and educating people around that, I think is really important.
I hear Zaz at the door.
I know. Yeah. They're like calling me. It's fine. I'm gonna text them and let them know. So I think those are the things that are really top of mind for me, and figuring out how I can organize the access and community I have to help people with those, get access to those.
Perfect. And then, I mean, outside of the entrepreneurship space, just for every person that wants to feel like they're helping in some way or doing their part to keep community, as strong as it can be in this moment, what tips do you have for how people should be structuring their kind of days or week to make sure that community is a part, and building community is a part of that too?
Yeah. So, even though I jumped to do these things again, I still had to, for my own personal life, really redefine what I'd see as community and connecting. So, for example, yesterday was actually the first time that I did this. So I call myself a social introvert. So people assume I'm extroverted, but I actually like myself and like being by myself. So this past week, though, was the first week that I was starting to get antsy and be like, okay, especially when you have something where there's no clear end date. You don't know how to plan for it because it's like, when is this going to be over? And so one of the things my friends and I did yesterday.
Hold on, I'm having some sound issues. Hold on.
Okay. You can see you though. You went out for a second.
Oops. Can you hear me, Sheena?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, now I can hear you. You're back. Okay. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. So I was saying that, one of the things a group of friends and I did yesterday was we all drive, we went to an empty parking lot and we parked kind of in a circle and we sat on our own cars while we talked to each other. and just were, and some still even had masks on, but just as a way to, and a couple of weeks ago, I probably wouldn't have wanted to do that because I'm just like, that doesn't make sense. Like, but we have to adapt to the time that we're in and find new ways to still get community. And so it was actually a lot of fun. One of my friends had a speaker and played music, and we talked regularly already, but it was just a way for us to still see each other. And again, in a time like this, particularly where people are losing lives and losing loved ones so quickly, I think it's important for us to, if we can, be able to at least have some type of contact. I had a friend the other day who stopped by and dropped a bouquet of flowers on my stairs. And, I opened the door and we did a quick like air hug. And again, it was just finding these other ways to connect with each other. So my advice to folks would be of like being creative and just thinking beyond what we're used to doing. People can't come in your house. You can't go to a restaurant. So what are the other things that you can do? And thank God for the friends that I have, because I had to get myself unstuck. Because I can't do the things I used to do, then I was just doing nothing. And so, but then, my friend who had the parking lot idea, or my friend who dropped off the flowers, I was like, oh, there are other ways to do things. She also told me that she lives in Roxbury. She'll walk to people's houses and sit on their stoop, and they'll like just talk to her through the door. So there's just we just have to find and just adapt to this time. I think even if it makes us feel weird or uncomfortable, because we don't want to lose kind of having any type of interaction with people. And then on the online piece, aside from the things that I've mentioned, I've also a couple of weekends done these parties called Virtual Vibes, and hired a DJ, put out a flyer, like a real party, had people sign up. The first one had like 275 people that signed up, and they were amazing. And, it was fun to see people dancing in their kitchens and dance. We were on Zoom, so dancing in their kitchens and dancing in their living rooms. And again, it's just different, and I think it takes some getting used to. But between the two parties that I've had so far, they both were supposed to be like 7 to 10, 8 to 12. They went till 2 or 4 a.m. Because people they want the space, to still be able to see people and connect. So really a time for all of us to be creative and thinking about how we connect with people.
Yeah, and kind of taking stock of ourselves and the people we care about too, because what you said really resonated in sometimes you don't even realize how much you've been missing of that until someone kind of really leans in and says, how are you? Can I do this or that? And some of that I think is because we were in this, like, it's immediate crisis. We don't quite know how long it's going to last. We're going to come out of it. And we keep expecting we're going to come out. And now it's at the point where, we really know it's going to be a reality for much longer. And we all have to kind of now turn that switch or make that pivot to like, okay, now how do we continue to not just be in survival mode, but like adapt to a new way of thriving.
Yeah.
Okay, so a few questions have come in from our amazing viewers. Lots of shout outs to Zaz also.
I text them like, I'm on a conference call. Can you please do it on my steps?
So we got a question from Michael. Have you noticed some of your virtual events having attendees that normally wouldn't have attended if it was in person?
Definitely. People have said that are not like partiers, like go to the club. They're like, can we continue this afterwards? Like, I mean, even for people that get dressed up, you're still in your own house. Like, you have your own drinks. You're not spending a lot of money. You're not looking for parking. And, I mentioned like one of them had the first like 275 people. Yeah, definitely. People thanked me. Like, there were people that are partiers that were missing partying, but I think a lot more were people that typically wouldn't be at a party. And we're just like, because there were some people on there with their whole families, and so it also allows you to be more global. There weren't just Boston people on there. Like there were people from other parts of the country that were on there because folks like me and others were inviting our friends and family from other places.
I love that. Okay, we got some shout outs for parking lot hangout, and then a comment that the city really needs to focus on an overhaul and switch to digital as a priority, that city workers are being pressed into risking exposure because of how many systems are still on paper,
Right.
which should be relatively simple to switch over to digital.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips? So let's say you're either a business owner or someone else who's trying to think about how, you know, for this moment, but also for the long haul, how do I get more digital fluency? You know, where do I even start in thinking about that?
Yeah. It can be overwhelming, particularly in this time because of what's going on. There's a million articles. I actually have a tab open of something that I want to read around like on the online places you can host festivals. And because I'm the festival that I do with the chamber in the fall, I'm actually redesigning it into a virtual festival. And so I'm doing a lot of research on that. And it's overwhelming. There's like 10 tools. And I think starting with something and just trying it out. So I started with Zoom, because it's just popular. I've sat in on some free tutorials myself to learn more about it. And I just go from there. Will I be using it long term? I don't know. But, I will say one thing about this time. I think because everyone's going through this in varying degrees at the same time, people are gracious and they're patient. Like the first thing I actually tried to do was a movie night, and it like the technology completely failed, and I had like 500 people signed up. And so people were sending me messages like, it's okay, we understand, like we appreciate you even doing this for us. So I think just figuring out, what part of your process can possibly be automated or digital, and start there. And just, I'm a big believer in bringing your customers through a process with you. So I'm very honest with my audience of like, I'm learning this new thing, I'm trying this out, I love your feedback, and I think people appreciate that.
Got it. So as we wrap, let me see if there's any other. Lots of love for you on the comment side. Any final words? Just thinking about Boston and what this means, relative to the work that you were doing before COVID hit, of really trying to think about how to make our city as welcoming a place as possible to give everyone a home. So what does that look like now with COVID, and especially how we're planning for the recovery?
Yeah. Still figuring that out, because one of the target audiences I have is new grad students. And so, for example, I don't know if people are coming here in the fall for grad school.
Yeah.
So, what I would say is what I'm focused on right now as far as the welcoming piece around Boston is, I actually think this gives us the opportunity to put more of a face to Boston, because you have access to actual residents now. Like, I'm on a call like next week with a group of Black doctors who are all coming to move to Boston. And so I'm doing kind of like what I would do in person, like a welcome thing for them. And, it's just much more intimate. Like I could speak, openly and freely about my experience. And then for them, for a time, like I am Boston to them, not fully, but like, they're like, oh, that was my first experience with someone from Boston. And so, that is what I was trying to build pre-COVID and want to continue to, of that, like Boston, has a reputation in the city, but Boston is just made up of people that the more people interact with us and understand that there's a range of experiences here, I think the more people will want to be here and see it as somewhere that's welcoming. So I think for all of us that have platforms, as much as we can be doing to continue to showcase what we're doing, be positive, be welcoming to people. I mentioned on that virtual vibes party, there were people from all over the country, but they're still going to associate that with someone in Boston, So I think as much as we can do that, and just continue to be a resource for people. Hopefully beyond this, that carries on into how people experience the city.
Got it. Well, thank you, Sheena, for all you're doing day in and day out. I'm really excited to see the next iteration of the festival and your business and all that you're working on.
Thank you.
And we're lucky to have you in Boston.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And folks can go on collierconnection.com. There's just more info about stuff there. And yeah, I'm attending a lot of other people's virtual stuff too. So I'm sure I'll see people in cyberspace somewhere.
Perfect. All right. Thanks so much. We'll see everyone later.
Bye.